Son, I gotta do better than this.
Lights out.
Sacking the cornerback is just like you devastate a city, or you cream a multitude of people. I mean, it's just like you put all the offensive players in one bag, and I just take a baseball bat and beat on the bag. So each time he came over there, I tried to tear his damn head off.
Let's play some football. Let's play some football.
The pressure is on. This is Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
Focus on what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. Think about that. Don't think about how you feel, how tired you are, how hot it is. You got to push yourself on the field like when you're playing football.
It's my honor to present the national championship trophy to Coach Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide.
To me, this is the ultimate team. All these guys bought into everything they needed to do to be the best players that they could be. There's more togetherness on this team than almost any team that we've ever had. And they had to overcome and persevere so much adversity through this season, and they've done it magnificently. And I'm so proud of this group for what they've been able to accomplish and going undefeated and winning the national championship.
Streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the Tide 100.9 app. Here is your host of Off the Edge, Jacob Harrison.
Your man overthrown. Spit out the ball.
Hello there. Good morning. Welcome in to Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. Jacob Harrison here with you. Joe Gaither behind the board, as well as Michael Bronner sneaking in as well. We're going to have a lot of fun today talking some Alabama Crimson Tide football for the next 57 minutes. We'll talk with Bama Central beat writer Joey Blackwell in about 12 minutes. We'll get to Nick Saban's opening comments. We'll also hear the question that he answered from Joey Blackwell last night about playing 460 minutes and how players get to that point. If it's a mental capacity or a physical capacity, how do players get to the point where they can handle that situation? I thought that was an incredible question from Joey. We'll play Nick Saban's answer to that and then get Joey's thoughts on the answer that he received, as well as preview the matchup coming up this weekend with Mississippi State, a national look, and a little Sunday night action between my NFL team and Joey's NFL team. So we'll get into all that in about 11 minutes here on the show. I do want to remind you can always catch this show and all of our local programming on Tide 100.9 on the Tide 100.9 app. That's available to you on Apple and Android devices. If you missed the show, you can always listen back to it on the app, in the podcast center on Tide109.com, as well as Spotify and the Apple Podcast. All of those ventures open to you. Also want you to give a thought to check out Alabama Vintage. 2210 University Boulevard, under the Crimson awning across from City Hall. Charlie has a stock of incredible items ranging from apparel to memorabilia, and all of it has that vintage feel that can, kind of spark a little nostalgia in you from your early days as a Crimson Tide fan, or maybe before you understood what Alabama was all about, the tradition, and you like to look back on that and maybe learn a little bit of something. Take a bit of history there with you with Alabama Vintage jerseys, commemorative T-shirts, sweaters, starter jackets, the hat wall, shoes as well. And there's modern items in there as well. And there's also items that are professional or just from bygone eras. I've been in there a handful of times, and Charlie bought some Star Wars Episode 1 memorabilia from 2000, when that movie first came out. So there's all types of items in there, and just vintage apparel in general as well. My wife has found things in there that don't have any sort of brand marketing on them. So you can definitely find something to fit your style there at Alabama Vintage. Check them out on Instagram for the new items that just come into stock. Claim them for your own there, and also connect with the brand ambassadors for 15% off your order. That's at Alabama VTG on the Instagram account at alabamavtg.com for the online store. So let's jump right into it. Let's jump out to Nick Saban's opening comments from last night. And I liked what Nick Saban had to say last night. In about 10 minutes, he showed a lot of enthusiasm and showed a lot of determination to get this team back to where it needs to be. You can tell there's still a fire in there. And we'll talk about, that competitive fire a little bit later in the show, what he had to say about that. It was one of the first questions he was asked. But you can hear the energy in his voice. They're ready to go take it to the Bulldogs. Here's what Coach Saban had to say in his opening comments in his weekly Wednesday press conference last night.
I think the most important thing we keep trying to emphasize with the players, which they have done a pretty good job of, is, responding the right way to try to improve and do things in a way that's going to help them create value for themselves and help them create value for the team. If you don't create any value for Alabama, you don't create any value for yourself. So everybody's got to focus on finishing. And I think it's a cue every day. When you practice, you get tired, you get lots of reps. That when you start to get that way, that's a cue for you to finish. And, you got to finish plays, you got to finish games. We certainly didn't finish the last game. The last 5 minutes of the game was not what we needed it to be. So that's something that we have to continue to work on. Playing at Mississippi State, every game we've ever had over there has been really, really difficult. Their team is playing really well, so this is going to be a real challenge for us, and we're going to have to bring our A game, play our best against a lot of really good players on both sides of the ball. So it's always a difficult place to play with the cowbells and all that, but we've been into a couple difficult circumstances so far this year, so hopefully we can continue to improve how we manage that.
Mentioning the cowbells, man, I cannot. I kind of touched on it yesterday. That dates back to like my high school days. My stepfather would come to our games with a cowbell, and he would ring it relentlessly the entire game. And that's why I hate cowbells, because we weren't very good. So when you're down 40-0 and all you can hear is one lone cowbell peeking out through Simmons Field, you're like, can you stop, please? Everybody knows who you are too. Everybody knows that's my stepdad. That Paul guy up there, he's the one ringing the bell and won't stop. Will not stop. Number 3 is not making enough plays to quantify the number of times that cowbell's ringing. I have a unjustified, it's completely justified. I have a relentless hate for cowbells. So please understand my grief in this time and why I won't be going to Start Vegas anytime soon. In all seriousness, though, Mississippi State, 5 points for being 5-0. They're not a bad football team, not a great football team. And who they've lost to, not great football teams either. Like I said yesterday, LSU, Memphis, both of those teams not exactly where they want to be. LSU's looking 4-8 in the face, by the way. Keep that in mind. But Mississippi State, their offense has been productive. So it's interesting to see kind of how those type of things turn out. Now, what's really interesting about Alabama is, obviously we all see all the inconsistencies with the team because we're used to so much perfection and yada, yada, yada. But with Alabama against Mercer and against Texas A&M last Saturday, those are the only 2 games where they started slow. Every other game they've started on fire and the other team can't get back. And then they get their garbage points at the end of the game when Alabama doesn't finish. Well, now Alabama didn't get started right. So now you anticipate, okay, well, they're going to come out hot and fired up. They're probably going to put the thing on, the Bulldogs pretty quickly, but are they going to be able to sustain it? Because that's been the conversation all year, right? Can we sustain consistency and performance? Can we play 60 minutes each and every week? Well, halfway through the season, that has not been the case. And Joey Blackwell, who will be joining us in about 5 minutes, asked Nick Saban, well, what are the trials that go into that? Is it a mental thing? Is it a physical thing? Because we know you got great athletes. We know you got great coaches. What's kind of meeting in the middle there? And here's what Coach Saban had to say.
Well, I think it starts with, your mindset. You're going to do what you feel like doing, or you're going to choose to do the things you need to do to push through difficult circumstances and difficult times and stay focused. And when you do that, then you develop a greater capacity to do it. So it starts out mindset, but then you become physically more able and capable to sustain, because you've had the mental toughness to push yourself to the next level. I mean, it's like blowing up a balloon. The first time you blow it up, it's really, really tough. Then you let the air out of it. It blows up to that point pretty easily. But then when you try to take it beyond that, it gets very difficult again. So it's the same thing with how you sustain, how you focus, how you finish, your capacity to do it. So then it becomes easier. But when you give into it, it never becomes easier. And then when you have to do it, it's very difficult to sort of be able to get done.
And I really like, first of all, big props to everybody that's on the Alabama beat and that was in the Zoom last night. I thought they asked really good questions for Coach when he was in a particular mood where he could, give some wise, thoughtful answers. And I thought, Saban gave us some really good answers throughout the night. But with that one in particular, to hearken that to being a balloon, like, hasn't this team kind of been like a balloon all year where it's like, okay, well, it's expanding, it's getting better, and then the air just kind of gets let out, and you're like, well, what's going on? What's going on? It never completely deflates. It hasn't popped, but there's still like, is there a leak? Did we not tie the end good enough? Why can't we just stay a full blown birthday balloon, right? And it can be frustrating, right? You just spent $20 on this balloon for your kid's birthday party, and it won't stay in the air. You get a little annoyed by that, right? So Alabama's well on their way, though. Whether they need a patch or just need to, get healthy and tie things all together, Alabama's on their way and they're going to be fine. And as I said, I fully expect them to beat Mississippi State. But continuing to look at what the Bulldogs are, it's not going to be a walk in the park. Even if Alabama does jump out to that early lead, it is a matter of respecting your opponent, respecting the victory, and respecting the process that goes into preparing yourself to go out there and be dominant, to go out there and to win. And I think sometimes, that doesn't just get lost on the fan base. Sometimes it gets lost on players too, when all you've ever known is winning. And, if you look back and you look over certain recruiting classes and how they perform, sometimes a recruiting class that maybe didn't rate as well gets caught up with other classes that rate very well. And those classes, do their thing for 3 years, and then it's time for that fourth season. It can be a little bit difficult for that class to replicate what they've seen because they maybe don't have the same kinds of talent, or maybe they've been coddled based off of the leadership and the talent that has come before them. They haven't had to put in those types of things, or they haven't learned them correctly, and it's hard for them to replicate it. But this is still Alabama, and maybe it'll take a little bit of time in season to learn. But it's certainly an opportunity to do so, which would, again, as I said this before Alabama even lost. If this team goes on to win a national championship, is it not just as special, if not more so, than many of the other ones? Does it not have just as special of a story as others? Wouldn't you be proud of a team that isn't quite as dominant as the years past, but still finds a way to grit it out and to win a natty? I would be. I'd be very proud of that team. I would almost be just as proud of that team as the 2020 team. It's hard to do with the 2020 team because that's about as close to perfection as you can get. But it's still right up there. It's still really, really impressive. So, all that being considered, we'll take our break, and when we come back, we'll talk with Joey Blackwell, the beat writer for Bama Central, the Sports Illustrated affiliate of the Crimson Tide. We'll get his thoughts on what Nick Saban had to say, Mississippi State, and so much more. So hang out with us next here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports.
Don't miss USA's new shoppable live competition series. Entrepreneurs pitch new products that you can buy live. And whoever sells the most gets a chance at a life-changing deal with one of America's biggest retail giants. Shop live and decide whose dreams come true on America's Big Deal, a shoppable live competition series. Live tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central on USA Network.
Under the biggest cactus in town, Taco Casa. Quality is number one. You got to start with a good quality product, but it's got to be at a good value to the customers.
Everything is about quality.
You just can't beat the quality, taste, and value.
And it's because we take pride in providing you with the best.
Good customer service and good food, good quality.
We want to make sure that we give that to them each and every time they come and visit us.
The sense of pride that we have in the quality, the consistency of our food carries over to everything we do in the stores. That's Taco Casa.
So as you guys know, Mark's gone.
The float artist at Fred's Floral just took off, days before the parade. They need a replacement before business passes them by.
Oh, and who am I going to get to finish the float?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. With Indeed Instant Match, we immediately show you quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed meet your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Brought to you by AutoZone. Free battery testing, free battery charging, and replacement batteries that fit your needs. That's what makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A very warm afternoon. The sky partly to mostly sunny. The high today in the upper 80s at 88. For tonight, mostly fair with the low at 64. Tomorrow, partially sunny and warm during the day, then a chance of rain showers tomorrow night, the high at 87. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 77 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Follow Off the Edge on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for live streams and instant analysis. Off the Edge with Jacob Harrison continues.
All right, let's have some fun. We're going to go out and talk with Joey Blackwell of Bama Central here in just a second. Do want to remind you can always check out the live streams of the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at Off the Edge 109 on all platforms. It also gets shared over there to Twitter as well, and you can find them on the Tide 100.9 social media pages as well. We share them through there to get the visibility going. So check us out there, like, share, subscribe, all of those great things, all greatly appreciated. And you also check out TikTok and Instagram. Palmer McCall helps me out a lot with the social media platforms that I just don't quite understand. So great thanks to him and to you as well for giving us a follow and interacting with our content. Let's jump out now to the hotline and welcome in my good friend Joey Blackwell of Bama Central, the Sports Illustrated affiliate of the Crimson Tide. What's going on, Joey?
Doing all right, Jacob. How are you this fine Thursday?
I'm doing good. I'm doing all right. Gearing up for a good weekend of football, both college and in the NFL. And we'll have one game to talk about in the NFL towards the end here. But I do want to start with the question that you asked Coach Saban last night. I thought it was a great question. Told you as much. And I thought his answer fit very well as too. What did you make of Saban's answer to your question about Alabama? And whether or not it's a mental or a physical, approach to be able to get to that point that he's been preaching on all year to play for, 60 full minutes in a football game.
Well, you just said it yourself. Playing 60 minutes is something that Saban's been harping on all year long. It's something that Alabama struggled with. I mean, there have been games where, you look at it and think of the Mercer game was a solid game. Southern Miss, Ole Miss even was a good game. But then you have games like Florida and Texas A&M that are actually very similar games, just that in one of them, Alabama was able to jump out to a very early lead. And that's really the difference in the game. Alabama did do a little bit better against Texas A&M as far as if you look at the third quarter. I mean, Alabama had 160 offensive yards compared to Texas A&M's 10. Alabama outscored them. I believe before Texas A&M's final two scores, Alabama outscored them 27-7, I believe, in the second half. And so they did do a better job, but then, of course, they kind of just, once they took that 38-31 lead there at the end, their defense just kind of, laid down. They didn't really do much to stop Zach Calzada and their offense on those final two drives, which of course will ultimately be the difference in the game. Florida, same thing. They allow the very raucous, home atmosphere to get back into the game, and when you do that, that's when we've seen Alabama have these problems. But as far as Saban's direct answer to the question, it's clear that this has been something that's been bothering him all year. I think last night his answer was kind of the everything coming full circle in that, he's getting aggravated and getting tired of his team not responding to that. And we've seen also that from Will Anderson earlier this week. After the Florida game, he talked about how this defense needed to place the Alabama standard, and the game against Florida was eye-opening. And then this past week after the Texas A&M game, Anderson kind of doubled down on that and said that apparently his warnings to the team have kind of fallen on deaf ears and they didn't listen. So I expect them to correct these mistakes over the next couple of games. I think Mississippi State's a prime opportunity for them to do so. This season is far from over. I know a lot of Alabama fans after the Texas A&M game kind of threw their hands in the air and like, well, that's it. The season is still far from over. They still have 6 games left. If they can win those games as well as, handle an SEC championship game, they're still very much in it.
And looking at Mississippi State relative to this situation with playing for 60 minutes, I mentioned at the top, there's 2 games where they started slow, that being Mercer and that being Texas A&M. Obviously, you can survive that against Mercer. Did not survive it against Texas A&M. And, we're all now aware of another broadcast, talking point that Alabama is now 0-4 when trailing by 14 at half. And you look at Mississippi State in their 3 wins, and they're only 5 points away from being 5-0. But in their 3 wins, they outscored their opponents in the first quarter, and the 2 losses, they did not. So there's kind of a trend there with the Bulldogs. So clearly, this is something that you can't afford to do with Mississippi State, is allow them to gain early confidence.
Yeah, Mississippi State and Mike Leach, they're a much more dangerous team than people give them credit for. One of my points heading into the segment was I was going to talk about how they're 5 points away from being undefeated, and I know you just brought that up, but I think that's something that shouldn't go overlooked. This is a team that every loss they've had has been very, very close, and the score I don't think really indicated how tough they played against Texas A&M. I think they played a really good game, especially at College Station, which is something that Alabama wasn't able to do. I have a lot of confidence in what Mike Leach has been doing. Their defense has still needed some help, but as far as on the offensive side of the football, they've been doing really well. I mean, if you look at their stats, I mean, that Will Rogers at quarterbacks he's only played 5 games and he leads the SEC in passing yards. They also have Emmanuel Forbes, who is tied for 3rd in the SEC with most interceptions. He has 2 so far this season. So they definitely have some skilled players on both sides of the football. I think that they'll give Alabama some trouble. I think Alabama's going to win, obviously, but I do still think that this is a Bulldogs team that Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide definitely should not underestimate heading into Starkville.
And we're halfway through the season, and Mississippi State, technically is not. They've played 5 games of a 12-game regular season, but 3-2 is not where I put them, let alone being this close to legitimately being undefeated. Do you think that Mike Leach, because he doesn't have the talent clearly, but his offense is clicking. Will Rogers is the right kind of quarterback for his system, and their offense, it's nothing spectacular. It's nothing crazy. This isn't the Gardner Minshew years at Washington State. It's not the Graham Harrell years at Texas Tech, but it's clicking. It's efficient. Is this early portion of the season kind of proof that maybe Mike Leach can survive in the SEC?
I think he can. I mean, I think one of the difficulties with Mike Leach is that he has Lane Kiffin in the same state as him. I think that makes it very difficult for him to recruit in-state players because we all know that Lane Kiffin's an outstanding recruiter. But going back to Mike Leach, I think that he. Sorry, I have a little bit of a head cold. That's why I'm sniffing so much. I have with Mike Leach. I think that I lost my point that I was going for. Oh, one of the things that people need to think about here is this, and if you're an Alabama fan, this should worry you a little bit. Is he had his time with the media yesterday, and one of the things he said was just because Alabama has 1 loss, they're still Alabama, and I think that rings true. I think that Mike Leach and his team are going to be in a much better headspace as far as mental preparation because they know what they're getting into with Alabama. I think they're going to come out swinging. I think that they're already, their backs are against the wall at this point. Like you said, they're 3-2 despite how close those losses have been, and I expect a lot out of them. This Alabama, particularly on defense, needs to be very well prepared. I'm not really concerned with Alabama's offense heading into this game. I think even against Texas A&M, they did a relatively decent job. There were some play calling mistakes, but I mean, they still had over 500 yards on offense, so I think they did all right there. But from a defensive standpoint, especially with the injuries that they've had and the lack of depth at middle linebacker, which we thought they were going to have, but now they're having issues with heading into this year. I think that could potentially be a problem. The fortunate thing is that Malachi Moore will be back. I think that was a huge problem against Texas A&M, and Malachi Moore should be able to contribute a lot to a dynamic passing attack that Mississippi State has to offer.
At least this defense doesn't have to worry about an Isaiah Spiller coming up the middle anymore.
DeMarvin Leal. Let's not forget about him.
Oh yeah, on the offensive side, yeah, no doubt. A lot of problems up the middle for Alabama. It's not good. With the pass rush, not even getting a sniff at Calzada. They got the one hit on him, that knocked him out of the game, but he came right back. Going into that game, I expected them to get 6 or 7 sacks and to have that breakout game because Arkansas had so much talent or had so much ease getting back there with 3-man pressures, and Alabama's got way more talent than Arkansas. But that was not the case. And then we heard from Will Anderson after the game, how he doesn't think that they've really taken the steps since what he said after the Florida game about watching more film and making football the most important thing and those sorts of things. What do you make of this pass rush, the front seven in general for Alabama's defense? Because they're going to be put to the test. Mississippi State gets rid of the ball quickly, but there are opportunities to get sacks in. Mississippi State's middle of the road and preventing sacks. They get sacked about 2 times a game. So there's opportunities to show that this pass rush can be what it was expected to be. And although that'll be difficult without Chris Allen and Drew Sanders, there's still been a lot of problems.
Yeah, there's still been a lot of problems. I think a lot of it centers around around the linebackers. I mean, we talk about injuries with Chris Allen and Drew Sanders all day, but Henry Toto and I was watching the game film yesterday, and Henry Toto and Christian Harris both when they're given the opportunity to try to rush the backfield and blitz, they have not been effective. It seems that as soon as they crash the line, they immediately just kind of break against the rocks. They don't really follow through with it. That's something they've had all problems all year long. Fortunately, Will Anderson has been able to kind of pick up a lot of that slack, but one man can't do it by himself. I kind of point to the linebacker position as far as the pass rush not being effective, because when you have linebackers that are very effective at blitzing, that opens it up. That really overwhelms an offensive line, and that allows a lot of times for defensive linemen to be able to get past. But when your linebackers are ineffective, you're not able to do that as well. And so I think that's why we haven't seen as productive of a pass rush by Alabama. Now, I do think they're going to improve this week. I don't think Mississippi State's line is going to be able to handle them quite as well Texas A&M did. I thought Texas A&M's offensive line did a fantastic job. I thought they, especially with the turnover they had from last season, I think they really stepped up against Alabama. But I don't expect Alabama to have quite as much problems this week as they did last week in that regard.
Certainly hope that's the case. Looking on the trenches on the other side, a lot of Alabama fans concerned about this offensive line, and we've had a lot of discussions about them. So it's kind of at that point where it's like, all right, guys, when are you gonna, step up? I continuously get asked, is Chris Owens the answer at right tackle? Is there somebody behind him that could maybe fight for that job? Is Darian Dalcourt the right guy at left guard? And now we've gotten to the point where there are some people that question Evan Neal's liability. Which is hilarious to me. He's a top 3 pick in the NFL draft come April. But is there a remedy for this offensive line, or are they just going to have to, get their shots in when they can get them and have to live with some of the failures that they've had so far this season?
Well, I think one of the things on the offensive line that hasn't really been talked about a lot is communication. Since there's such a high turnover, this is a group of players that haven't really played together a lot. You have a lot of new faces, not necessarily new faces, but new to the starting job this year. And I think that they're still working that out. I think Evan Neal's done a fantastic job so far this season. I think last week at Texas A&M, yeah, he didn't do so much, but he had a lot on his plate against Texas A&M. Regarding Chris Owens, I would like to see I'd like to see Chris Owens start against Mississippi State, but I'd also like to see Nick Saban maybe put J.C. Latham in there in the second half if Alabama can pull away a little bit and see what he's capable of doing, because J.C. Latham is phenomenal. Of course, he hasn't seen much time this year as a freshman, but I'd really like to see what he can do, because they were practicing him a lot during the several availabilities that we had where we could view the practices before the season started. They were utilizing him a lot, and I'd like to see what he can do, because Chris Owens is a fantastic player, but he just hasn't been able to provide the protection that Bryce Young needs. Alabama's the offensive line as a whole has done well, but overall, but they still had a game here or there, particularly the Texas A&M game and the Florida game, where they've struggled to provide protection. And Bryce Young, fortunately, has been able to get out of trouble a lot due to his mobility. But that being said, he shouldn't have to do that.
One last question on the Tide before we circle back to this game later. Jameson Williams, I think this is my opinion. You can give yours on this certainly, but I think he's solidified himself as the number one option on this team. But with the drops that really kind of made the breakout. I say breakout. It's just one more in a long line of rising stock for him. But 10 catches, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns. All of that was kind of all for naught because of the drops, the 8 drops that accompanied him from his fellow receivers, whether it was Billingsley or Mechie. Saban talked early about Bryce Young not having the help around him, and we've seen that from the offensive line. Now we've seen that from the wide receivers. Similar kind of question. Is this something where we've just got to live with it? Because 2 experienced receivers Alabama expected to have, Xavier Williams, Javon Baker, they're currently not with the team, and it's kind of a hindrance right now with the youth behind these guys.
No, it is, and you can people have been pointing to Jameson Williams saying he needs to improve his drops, a lot, which is understandable. But at the same time, drops have been a problem across the board. Mechie had a couple this past game. Cameron Latu had a drop in the end zone. There's been a lot of those issues with this team, and it all goes back to practice, which is something that we've heard the wide receivers talk about over the past couple of weeks. And we even heard Slade Bolden talk about it on, I believe that was Tuesday, talk about how in order to change the mentality, it all starts in practice. In order to change the mistakes you've made, it all starts in practice. And I think that that's what they're trying to do this week, because nobody knows better in this world than those wide receivers that they've had too many drops. Alabama fans can say all they want, but there's nobody that's more upset with a wide receiver when they make a drop than the wide receiver themselves. And that's something that they're going to have to work through. As Alabama fans, it's something that they're going to have patience. I know, we're halfway through the season, which is typically when you're supposed to, be in midseason form, as it says. You're supposed to have a lot of those kind of glitches and things fixed. But there's so many issues, including drops. I think Alabama fans are just going to have to kind of tolerate it for a little bit longer while they still get things figured out. Unfortunately, the schedule is about to lighten up a little bit over the next couple of weeks here. So that should help them out.
Talking with Joey Blackwell at Blackwell Sports, beat writer for Bama Central, the Sports Illustrated affiliate of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now a national perspective, Joey. Oklahoma, they're rolling with Caleb Williams, it looks like, thanks to some grade A journalism, big J journalism from their campus newspaper. Is that the right move? Spencer Rattler, this kid, he's faced some adversity, hasn't always responded to it well, but did get better as the season went along last year. Is this the right move to roll with Caleb Williams after the big win against Texas?
Well, I think so. They put him in and he performed very well. Spencer Rattler has not lived up to expectations heading into this year. It's kind of hard to think that he was the Heisman favorite heading into this year after some disappointments. Oklahoma has still been able to win games, but I don't think it's because of his effectiveness. Now that they have another guy in there, that's a way of rejuvenating a team, especially if it's somebody that the team roots for and pulls for. And we saw that Oklahoma comeback and heading into the second half, I remember thinking, dang, Texas is going to win this game. And I actually stopped watching. I turned it to a different game, and then only to find out later when I was at Texas A&M in the stadium that Oklahoma been able to make the comeback. So obviously, he's able to lead, which is something that they've kind of had problems with. And he's able to make an impact, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. I think he is the answer. And also, just quick kudos to the Oklahoma State, student newspaper that was able to do that. I think, they caught a lot of flack for that. But at the end of the day, I mean, if there's no rules against it, why not?
Yeah, and big thumbs down to Oklahoma joining Alabama in the no media at practice movement. Big thumbs down. Kind of a buy or sell kind of thing, but there's 3 undefeated top 10 teams not named Georgia or Oklahoma, and I want to know which one you trust more. It's Cincinnati, it's Iowa, and it's Michigan. Iowa and Michigan do not meet in the regular season. What out of those 3, Big Ten area teams? I know Cincinnati's in the American. Which one do you trust more throughout the rest of the season?
Well, I trust it's out of those 3. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I would trust Cincinnati.
There we go.
I can't believe I'm saying that, but with Cincinnati, they have just beat the snot out of everybody they've played so far this year, and not to mention that their schedule is only going to get easier. They've kind of already gotten past their difficult games. Now, if or when, should I say, when they make it to college football playoff, will they, if they're able to make it, will they be able to beat a Power 5 team? Well, that remains to be seen. I don't know if their skills necessarily match up, but from what I've seen, they've done a really great job. But that being said, as far as if I'm picking somebody to make it to the college football playoff right now between those 3 teams, I'm definitely hanging my hat on Cincinnati. Iowa is also a really, really good team. They're very strong defensively. They have a solid offense, but they do still have some tough games ahead of them, as does Michigan. I don't necessarily trust Jim Harbaugh with Michigan. I've put my trust in him before, and it's been betrayed. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm all in on the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Well, then sticking with the Big Ten there, real quick, who do you think walks away with the whole thing in Indianapolis? Iowa's. Everybody keeps saying Iowa's going to run the table. Well, they're most likely going to face either Ohio State or Michigan in that space. Plus, they've still got Wisconsin. The Big Ten is not near decided. Who do you think is going to be the team to walk away with that one?
I hate to pick the favorite here, but I'm kind of leaning towards Iowa. They have a solid, year so far. Michigan State is also really impressing. They're also undefeated at 6-0. I think Michigan State could beat Michigan, so I kind of take Michigan out of that game. I think that Ohio State obviously still has to play Michigan, so that could be a deciding factor. If I had to pick a favorite, I think it would be Iowa, just because if you look at the Big Ten West, their side of the conference is much lighter than the Big Ten East. I think they have an easier path to make it to the Big Ten championship game. It's kind of hard to pinpoint who from the East will be able to make it. But Iowa, as of right now, in my mind, is the favorite to win. But, the Big Ten is just one of those. It's exciting like the SEC, but in a different way, in that you really never know what team you're going to get. It's like the old Forrest Gump thing, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what team is going to show up every week. Iowa has been the one team in the Big Ten so far that has shown up every single week and has played to their best. And that's why I think that they have the best shot.
Yeah, I think Ohio State and Northwestern are the only teams to kind of repeat as opponents there in Lucas Oil Stadium since the Big Ten moved to the format that it's in. And I agree, the East is pretty difficult, and either that's going to make a battle-worn team very prepared to take on Iowa, or that's going to be Iowa's advantage that their opponent will be too beat up and bruised. Looking towards the SEC now, Kentucky and Georgia. Plenty of people not going to give Kentucky a chance. Plenty of people like me that are going to root for them, even though they probably know in the back of their head they're going to lose. And then there's Kentucky fans who think they have a really great shot, and I don't blame them. Will Levis has had a great year. Their running attack is just as good as it's ever been. Their defense is staunch. But these are all the same things we said about Arkansas. So what kind of chance do you give Kentucky to go into Athens and walk away with a dub?
They definitely got a chance, but I don't think it's that big of one. I think in order for Georgia to win, Stetson Bennett really has to avoid throwing interceptions. This is the Kentucky defense that can absolutely expose him if they're given the correct opportunity. That being said, Bennett's been all right so far. He has a few, and he's not going to be pressured as much as he has been in the past couple of weeks. He's already pressured into making big plays. I think Georgia's going to jump out ahead and take care of it pretty handily. And let's not forget about Georgia's defense. I think that's really going to be the deciding factor in this game is, can Kentucky's offense step up and face the Georgia defense? But I think Georgia's defense is going to be too much for the Wildcats to handle. I definitely am leaning towards Georgia in this one. I will be rooting for the Wildcats. I think I'm like you. I do root for chaos. So seeing an undefeated Kentucky team with a relatively easy schedule for the rest of the year, that's kind of exciting to me. But at the same time, I got to pick Georgia in this one.
And finally, with LSU, I think LSU is looking 4-8 in the face really hard. They've got Louisiana Monroe patched in with 5 other top 20 teams, or that will be top 20 teams by the time they play them. Texas A&M last on the schedule, they'll be in the top 20 by then. This question is more about when Ed Orgeron gets fired, because it's going to happen. Everybody knows it's going to happen. He's still putting his best foot forward. He's still going to be at O, but with the Alabama game coming up, they're probably going to lose 2 games before they come to Tuscaloosa. What do you do if you're LSU? Do you let Ed Orgeron coach that game to help try to keep it as close as humanly possible, even though 45 points won't be close? Or do you just cut your losses because it's just time?
I think if you're LSU, you hang on to Ed Orgeron until after the Alabama game. I think that's when we'll see him fired. I think that a lot of the LSU AD, as well as a lot of the fans, are still hanging their hat. The ones that are still holding out hope, I think they're still hanging their hat on LSU beating Alabama back in 2019 with Joe Burrow and that fantastic offense they had back then. I could see LSU keeping him around until that game, and if Alabama wins, which right now, of course, they're highly favored to do so, I could see them firing him after that game, which would be quite ironic. We have all seen the locker room video of Ed Orgeron after the Alabama LSU game, and it would be a twist of irony if Alabama's the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I think that LSU will stick with him until then. Now on the other side of that, it might be smart to kind of get rid of him before that game, because the Alabama LSU game is the game that all LSU fans circle on the calendar every year. And you might want to fire him early to have an excuse for why LSU lost this year. But that being said, I think LSU is going to stick around with him as long as they can. And I think that's going to be the game that ends it.
In short, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
And you know me, Jacob. I've always been a big, I've always been a big fan of Ed Orgeron until the past year or so. Things have really gone downhill, but I don't like saying bad things about him. But there comes a point where even somebody like me that likes him, there comes a time when I can't turn a blind eye anymore, and it's starting to get a little crazy down there in Baton Rouge.
Exactly. All right, Sunday night, my Steelers, your Seahawks at Heinz Field. Man, Al Michaels thinks this is such a foregone conclusion that he's taking the week off, man.
I don't blame him. Oh gosh, I know you're a big Steelers fan. I'm a big Seahawks guy, and I would feel a lot better about myself if Russell Wilson was still around. But I think Najee Harris is going to just rip holes in the Seahawks defense. Their defense has been really prone to the running game this year, and I think that the Steelers are going to handle them. And the fact that it's being played at Heinz Field just adds insult to injury. I don't think the Seahawks stand a chance, and I'm just going to bow to your football greatness. But at least I beat you in fantasy this year. I will always hang my hat on that.
No faith in Geno, Joey?
Come on, yeah, it's Geno era.
I do not trust Geno. I am not a believer in Geno. He'll have to prove it to me before I get on that bandwagon. Right now,
what about those that first drive and a half against?
He looked good. He looked good.
Last I checked, the Seahawks still lost that game.
Hey, if it's any consolation prize, you know, obviously I'm going to think the Steelers are going to win because of the running game, but defensively, the Steelers are pretty beat up. So Geno might look a lot better. And plus, the Steelers have a tendency of playing down. Not that the Seahawks are bad, but, you know, with Geno Smith being the quarterback and not Russell Wilson, I wouldn't be surprised
It's okay, Jacob.
if Geno throws like 2 touchdowns at 250.
Okay, Jacob. It's okay, Jacob. You can say the Seahawks are bad. I know that they're very bad.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about the Jags here. I mean, we're talking about
fair.
we're talking about
That's
8-9 maybe, right?
You pick the one team that I would pick the Seahawks to beat right now.
Geno era. Yeah, naturally, you know, for just for our friendship and you know, being the Steelers and the Seahawks, they don't get to meet that often. And then of course, you know, Russell Wilson's got to have, you know, a claw finger and can't play in the game. So it's just the way of the beast, I guess.
That photo of him was so ridiculous. It's like, dude, you just broke your finger. Why are you in a wheelchair? With sunglasses inside at night. What are you doing?
It's hospital protocol. All right, Joe, we got to get out of here before we do a final prediction for Alabama and Mississippi State.
Well, you know, Alabama, kind of switching gears here, you know, Alabama, they haven't lost back-to-back games since 2000, during the regular season since 2007. Mississippi State was one of those games. I think that history is not going to repeat itself this year. The Bulldogs are going to get a few passing yards, keep it interesting, and they're better than you think. Defense is going to keep it from getting out of hand, I think. But, you know, you're messing with history here. And after all the streaks that are broken last week, I think Nick Saban's not going to let that happen. My final score prediction is Alabama 38, Mississippi State 24.
I like it. Joey at Blackwell Sports on the Twitter account, beat writer for Bama Central. You can check out all his work at BamaCentral.com. Joey, I always appreciate the time, man. Don't take it too hard on Sunday night, all right?
Absolutely,
hey,
Jacob. Best of luck to your Steelers.
And take earplugs to Starkville and have an extra set for me because no, absolutely. I won't be there, but just in spirit, have the earplugs for me, and maybe they'll work here in Tuscaloosa too.
I was there 2 years ago when Tua got hurt, and I have since learned to bring earplugs, so I'll definitely bring a couple of pairs. Don't worry.
Absolutely. Always appreciate it, Joey. Take it easy, man.
Thank you. You too.
At Blackwell Sports on the Twitter account. We'll come back, wrap it up. One final word from Nick Saban as well, and his competitive fire. You don't want to miss this one. Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports.
Under the biggest cactus in town, Taco Casa. Quality is number one. You got to start with a good quality product, but it's got to be at a good value to the customers.
Everything is about quality.
You just can't beat the quality, taste, and value.
And it's because we take pride in providing you with the best.
Good customer service and good food, good quality.
We want to make sure that we give that to them each and every time they come and visit us.
The sense of pride that we have in the quality, the consistency of our food carries over to everything we do in the stores. That's Taco Casa.
So as you guys know, Mark's gone.
The float artist at Fred's Floral just took off, days before the parade. They need a replacement before business passes them by.
And who am I going to get to finish the float?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. With Indeed Instant Match, we immediately show you quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed meet your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Brought to you by AutoZone. Free battery testing, free battery charging, and replacement batteries that fit your needs. That's what makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Don't miss USA's new shoppable live competition series. Entrepreneurs pitch new products that you can buy live. And whoever sells the most gets a chance at a life-changing deal with one of America's biggest retail giants. Shop live and decide whose dreams come true on America's Big Deal, a shoppable live competition series. Live tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central on USA Network.
We know it's lonely at the top, but we don't mind.
National championship number 18. 13 in all. Absolute perfection.
Roll Tide. Join us Saturday as the Crimson Tide head to Starkville for a showdown with Mississippi State. Our coverage begins at 3 on your home for Bama football.
Under the biggest cactus in town, Taco Casa. Quality is number one. You got to start with a good quality product, but it's got to be at a good value to the customers.
Everything is about quality.
You just can't beat the quality, taste, and value.
And it's because we take pride in providing you with the best.
Good customer service and good food, good quality.
We want to make sure that we give that to them each and every time they come and visit us.
The sense of pride that we have in the quality, the consistency of our food carries over to everything we do in the stores. That's Taco Casa.
So as you guys know, Mark's gone.
The float artist at Fred's Floral just took off, days before the parade. They need a replacement before business passes them by.
And who am I going to get to finish the float?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. With Indeed Instant Match, we immediately show you quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed meet your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Brought to you by AutoZone. Free battery testing, free battery charging, and replacement batteries that fit your needs. That's what makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Don't miss USA's new shoppable live competition series. Entrepreneurs pitch new products that you can buy live. And whoever sells the most gets a chance at a life-changing deal with one of America's biggest retail giants. Shop live and decide whose dreams come true on America's Big Deal, a shoppable live competition series. Live tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central on USA Network.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A very warm afternoon. The sky partly to mostly sunny. The high today in the upper 80s at 88. For tonight, mostly fair with the low at 64. Tomorrow, partially sunny and warm during the day. Then a chance of rain showers tomorrow night. The high at 87. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 77 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
You're listening to Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
Dan Orlovsky coming in the clutch, man. In the clutch. We have ESPN on TV in here every day, and I was complaining to Michael Bronner that it seems every day between the hour of 11 and 12 a.m., 12 p.m., whatever, ESPN takes the time out of their day to trash talk the Steelers while I'm in here. And they're doing a team least likely to make the playoffs that's a contender or whatever. And they get to my Pittsburgh Steelers. Marcus Spears picks my Steelers. And then Dan Orlovsky comes in on the clutch and picks Michael Bronner's New England Patriots. Gotta love it.
Dan's going to feel a lot more dumb if the Patriots make the playoffs than Spears will if the Steelers make the playoffs. That's all I'll say about that.
Are the Patriots 2-3?
It's still early. It's relax.
It's still early. Why is it still early for the Patriots but not for the Steelers?
Fair enough. I'm just saying, one has a pedigree of success over the past 20 years and making the playoffs every year. Last year was an anomaly, of course, but we're gonna be all right. Recall 2001, we started 1-3, first year of Brady starting. Just saying.
None of those arguments added up. It's just
let me rationalize.
Just a bunch of Homer gibberish just falling out of your lips.
Just let me rationalize. Let me keep my hope. If we lose by 30 to Dallas, talk on Sunday. Talk to me on Tuesday. But
you're gonna lose by 30 to Dallas.
Well, we'll talk about that on Tuesday then. But I don't think we are.
I love going to has a history of success over the past 20 years of making the playoffs. Like Steelers weren't one of the other teams to win multiple Super Bowls in the past 20 years, and made the playoffs routinely when Big Ben was healthy. And also, if you want to talk 20 years, how about I'll raise you 50. I'll raise you 50. Who got to 6 first? You want to go that route?
No, I don't want to go that route. You want to go?
You seem to have wanted to go that route.
We got 3 minutes left here. I think we both know we can keep going for 3 minutes here, but I don't think anyone wants to do that.
No, nobody wants to hear that. What they do want to hear is Nick Saban. Before we get to Saban's sound here in just a bit, do want to let you know on a couple of news hits that you can check out at Tide109.com. First of all, Tony Brown is reunited with his arch rival. He's out in Las Vegas, and a certain guy that he called out in a post-game interview is his teammate, and he happens to be the best receiver on the team. So you can go check that out, as well as John Petty, who has signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Pelicans. That basically means that his rights are owned by the Pelicans, but he'll most likely play for the Birmingham Squadron. So you'll be able to check him out there in Birmingham later this year as well, most likely. So John Petty joining Herb Jones and Kyra Lewis in New Orleans in effect. So let's head out right now and hear Nick Saban kind of help us close out the show with talking about his competitive fire.
Well, I mean, I've always got competitive fire because I respect, what it takes to win. I respect what it takes to prepare to win. And I try to do it every week, and I try to get the players to respond to it, each and every week, so that they have the best chance to create value for themselves when they go out and play. And when players don't play well, they don't create value for themselves, and they don't create value for the team. And, we made too many mental errors, didn't tackle well early in the game. And I think all that starts with your mindset in terms of the intensity that you have, the focus that you need to be able to go out there and compete against good players in tough environments. That's as difficult of competitive situation as, you're going to be in. And, what defines, great competitors is people who can be their best when their best is needed. And I think people evaluate that and look at that. So that's something that I'm always trying to help the players have the best opportunity to do. Now, I have pride in performance too, not just for the defense, but for our whole team.
And that's Nick Saban helping us close it out, talking about that competitive fire. He's still got it going, man. That got me fired up last night. And I think he's ready to put the bank thing on Mississippi State tomorrow. We'll break it all down. Up next, the Jay Barker Show, followed by the game with Ryan Fowler. Side tonight as well. Hey, Coach, and the Nick Saban Show will get you home. Y'all have a great Thursday, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Off the Edge.
Can't tell you how proud